Recorded and will be available for future viewing on our website. This morning, we're starting a new worship service, and our minister, the Reverend Tom Bozeman, will be preaching the service. Please turn off or silence your devices, and as you do, allow yourself to enter sacred time together and take a breath and another and join in the spirit of reverence.
And so for each of those breaths, just like allow it to breathe. So once Rachel's done, I'd love to go through the responsive reading with you.
Good morning. Welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart, where we strive to put love at the center of how we show up in the world. So, each week, during our Sunday morning worship services, we join together in affirming that love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer, and this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Since not everyone can attend in person, we're streaming this worship service online, and we extend a special welcome to all who are joining us virtually. The joys and sorrows portion of our service, however, is private, and we will temporarily pause the stream for that. Other than that, the worship service is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on our website. This morning, we're starting a new worship series, and our minister, the Reverend Tom Bozeman, will be preaching the sermon. Please turn off or silence your devices, and as you do so, allow yourself to enter sacred time together and take a breath. And another. And join in the spirit of reverence. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely and with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. The flaming chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It suggests the transformations that take place when we are held with religious community. When we light the chalice in worship, we illuminate a world that we feel called upon to serve with love and a sense of justice. Please join us in lighting our chalice by reading together the words on the screen and in your order of service. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, of the life we share together.
As a non-creedal religion, we covenant with one another in ways that will fulfill the greatest hopes and dreams of ourselves and our community. These covenants that we make, we decide upon democratically in our own communities. I invite you to join our recovenanting, which takes a few lines from our behavioral covenant and has a response. May we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. So after each one of the three lines that I recite, I invite you to join with me in reading this. For all the ways that we have neglected to participate in the life of our congregation, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not supported the goals of the congregation, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. and for all the ways that we have not accepted and civilly engaged with challenging situations. May we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. So having recovenanted with one another in part, I invite you to just turn and see these beautiful folks that you're sharing this space with, sharing this community with. Maybe wave, maybe smile at them, maybe do a bow if you feel so moved. And the folks online as well, and the folks in the balcony. And then I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn 114, Forward Through the Ages. Is the mic on? There we go. Between our gatherings in person, our gatherings online, our phone calls with folks, we go through various moments in life. One moment leading to the next, leading to the next. You could count them up between an appointment at 10 a.m. and an appointment at 2 p.m. How many moments might come in between? 1,000? 1,000,000? 10 million? Each one an experience, a slice of our humanity, that when we regather with others, we can offer and share for them to see us anew and for us to be known anew. And so I would invite folks during our joys and sorrows this morning, if you feel moved to share something, to offer of yourself in that way, whether it be something that's lifting you up, something that's weighing you down, to offer of yourself so that we can all hold what you're holding together. And if you have something to share, I would just ask that you also share with us your name so that we know who you are. Does anybody have a joy or a sorrow? seated. And Joey will lead us in a responsive reading.
I invite you all now to open a gray hymnal and join me in reading aloud responsive reading number 470. In the gray hymnals, I will read the regular text. I invite you to join me in reading the italicized text. We affirm this unfailing renewal of life. We affirm the steady growth of human companionship.
Rising from ancient cradles and reaching for the stars, people the world over shall seek ways of understanding.
We affirm a continuing hope.
Out of every tragedy, spirits and individuals shall rise to build a better world.
So as I noted last week, we can, especially this year, being an election year, we can be very aware of political questions, political issues that are going on in our wider society. But oftentimes those are the more surface level ways that we see underlying theological questions be discussed. There are some Unitarian Universalist answers to these theological questions, and so over the course of this series, we're kind of walking through some of those. In the past series, I did a paraphrase of UU theologian Rebecca Parker to articulate one aspect, or a couple aspects, of Unitarian Universalist theology. That we are beings that are generous, capable, and connected with one another and the earth. That what is wrong with our society is that the lives of some are being exploited to benefit the others, and that we can address this by countering that exploitation and also manifesting a solid sense of enough. In gratitude for life's goodness, showing a humble capacity to be a part of the web of life. Another articulation of some Unitarian Universalist theology comes from UU religious educator Lila Ibrahim. It's a blessing each of us was born. It matters what we do with our lives. What each of us knows about God is a piece of the truth, and we don't have to do it alone. Over the course of my time as a professional activist, I realized that while I had become really familiar with politics, what was missing for me was religion. As blogger Sarah Robinson wrote, while politics is about how we're going to make the world better, progressive religion tells us why it's necessary to work for change. We offer the essential metaphors and worldview that everything else derives from, the frames that give our dreams shape and meaning. And this is essential because all around us are frameworks that put at risk the global community of humanity, the many diverse people who live across this whole earth, and the ecological systems of which we're all a part. The framework makes all the difference. If we're given one kind of framework, then we read the story of Adam and Eve being placed in the Garden of Eden as one where humans are placed at the center of everything with the authority to rule over everything else. If we're given another kind of framework, then we can read the exact same story as one of human beings being placed among many other beings, our older siblings, with the responsibility to take care of and to be in relationship with all of them. The framework makes all the difference. And we Unitarian Universalists don't have to start from scratch. We are the inheritors of what John Bjorns and Rebecca Parker describe as a communal theological house, built by those who lived and labored and loved long before us. Our social justice hopes have their origins in the ethical teachings of our own religious tradition. They are the same ethical teachings that gave rise to the movement for abolition of slavery and the women's rights movement in the 18th and 19th centuries, the Christian social gospel of the late 19th century that inspired the progressive era of the early 20th, the civil rights movement of the 20th century, the Roe v. Wade court case, which made it to the Supreme Court being the result of activism by liberal church women. Ultimately, much of this comes back to what we hope for and how we hope for it. So last week we explored the ultimate ends towards which we're aiming, and then this week we'll be exploring moving beyond isolation, individualism, and lack of purpose. And so our questions to contemplate today, both in your order of service and on the screen fairly soon. What is the nature and purpose of religious community? What brings the religious community into being and holds it together? How does the community define the relationships and roles of its members? What rituals and spiritual practices align the community with what it understands as the sacred, the source of life? So all of these are the questions entailed in what's called, in theological terms, ecclesiology. And so we're going to take a little moment for you to think on, just pick one of these. Don't try to do all four, because we only have so much time. But just pick whichever one of these speaks to you, whichever one of those sparks something for you. And we'll just think about it quietly for a couple minutes while Jeremy plays, and then we'll come back and discuss. So just to walk through the questions once again, they're also printed in your order of service if you'd like to refer to them there. What is the nature and purpose of religious community? What brings the religious community into being and holds it together? How does the community define the relationships and roles of its members? And what rituals and spiritual practices align the community with what it understands as the sacred, the source of life? So just give that some thought quietly to yourself for a couple moments as Jeremy plays, and then we'll come back and discuss. I invite you to turn to one other person sitting near you, maybe two at the most, and I'll give you 2 minutes to share between you just what came up for you in response to these questions. And I'll let you know when the 2 minutes are up. What stuck out to you? What stuck out to you from something that you either heard yourself saying or heard somebody else say that you'd like to share with us? Yeah.
Well, Amanda was talking about defining the roles of its members and how, like, although you're up there and you're the minister, we still do like shared ministry, and so it's not like you're up there, you have all the answers. Like, we're all kind of searching together, and that's one way it's different than from other spiritual congregations.
Thank you. Thank you. Others? Yeah.
I said this to them, so I guess I'm been told to say it. To me, I thought about the first two questions, the nature and purpose of religious community and what brings the community into being, holds it together. And to me, it's found in the affirmation of faith that we say at the beginning of every service. We have a doctrine, we have a sacrament, we have a quest for truth, we have a prayer, we have a covenant, we try to be peaceful with one another, we have love. And the thing about this religion is that all of those things, and it says in this affirmation, we are the ones that define it. We don't have a voice from outside. Last night I was reading something, and it said that in a true liberal democracy, you get to talk back. You don't just receive something, you receive it and then you talk back.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
We talked about what brings us together also, I think, and the belief that there's just something bigger than us. I've said for a long time, it's not about me. It's just not about me. That I don't know if that's true, but I believe it to be true. I also thought of things like traditions, music, longing for something better, loneliness, and need for deeper connection and to create together.
Beautiful. Thank you, Maggie. Wonderful. Well, thank you for either whatever you shared into the space, whatever you talked about with your partner. All of these are key aspects of our exploration of what it means to be in religious community together. And so with that, we've got a story for you. So, in the beginning of the modern world, around the time of the American and French Revolutions, three ideals were said to walk hand in hand: liberty, equality, and what was then named fraternity, but which we might better today call kinship. And then something happened. In the turmoil of revolutions and time, the three became separated. Liberty went west, to America first of all, but alone it changed its character. It had meant freedom to fulfill one's purposes, to fulfill one's promises, but it meant that less and less. And more, it started to mean merely having no responsibilities. Freedom to exploit the land, freedom to exploit other human beings, freedom from obligation, freedom from community. And at the same time, equality went east, and it also changed. It became the equality of the gulag, the equality of the masses, all waving the same little red book. And meanwhile, the sense of authentic human kinship went into hiding. As the most religious of the three ideals, kinship became disparaged by the secular elites, so it hid in the religious lives of people suffering oppression. But when there were efforts to restore some quality of opportunity, some freedom to America that is filled with both equality and kinship, as in the civil rights movement, it started to reemerge. And when there were efforts to restore to socialist equality some authentic covenantal freedom of worship, of conscience, of speech, of association, there it was again, reuniting the separated, reconnecting both liberty and equality to the reality of human kinship. That instead of freeing us from community and connection, frees us to fulfill our promises and our purposes. And that instead of equalizing most of us in a common suffering, equalizes us in mutually supported thriving. Let's give a round of applause for our liberty, equality, and kinship. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn 113, Where is Our Holy Church?
As equal
seated. So as I mentioned in last week's sermon, this series, we're digging into some theology. I encourage you to put your thinking caps on. I don't remember if I had told this story in a previous sermon or not, but I was in a relationship many years ago that was not going that great, and we moved in with my partner's brother, who thankfully, or maybe unthankfully, had a Microsoft Xbox. And there were all these video games that could be played on there, and one of them was this game called Skyrim, which is, for any of you who know video games, was quite a while ago now. I'm not a huge video game person, particularly because in this instance, it seemed like a great way to escape from the relationship that wasn't working. And so I could stay up way late after she went to bed and just play the games and play the games and play the games, and then sleep in late and kind of miss seeing her in the morning, and then repeat the same thing the next night and the next night and the next night. And the benefit of that was I didn't have to face the relationship that wasn't working. But the downside of that was that it didn't actually bring me any more serenity. It didn't actually bring me any more peace. It didn't actually bring me any more of myself. There are so many very easy avenues in our society to find our way out of things by going back into isolation. Finding our way out of relationships that aren't working, or friendships that are challenging, or other parts of life, because there's so many things to spend our time on. There's so many things to stream or to play. And so for you, how do you end up coming back to isolation? To individualism? To the sort of lack of purpose that sticks with us whenever we get stuck by ourselves for too long. As human beings, we are connected to, we are reliant on other human beings. It's not a matter of whether we are reliant on others. It's a matter of how we want to organize our reliance, either consciously or unconsciously. As I mentioned earlier, ecclesiology is the category of theology that answers those four questions. What is the nature and purpose of a religious community? What brings the religious community into being and holds it together? How does the community define the relationships and roles of its members? And what rituals and spiritual teachings align the community with what it understands as the sacred, the source of life? The classical Christian answer to these questions, in the words of Rebecca Parker, is that the church is the living body of Christ and the means by which Christ's gift of salvation is made available to humanity. Its purpose is to incarnate the life of Christ in the world, his ministry of teaching, healing, and liberating the poor and oppressed. The church is brought into being by the grace of God and sustained by the presence of the Spirit. Members of the church are to use their diverse gifts to uphold the community and enable it to fulfill its purpose. They are to be of service to one another and to society. The church's primary rituals are the sacraments of baptism and Eucharist, with their symbols of water, bread, and wine. And through the spiritual disciplines such as praying, interpreting scripture, and sharing resources for the common good, disciplines that align the church with itself and its sacred source of all life, which is God. So that sounds like it might be kind of nice. But of course, the reality for any of us who have experienced many churches is that sometimes it's a bit different than that. At its worst, there are experiences of outright abuse. But even when that abuse isn't happening, there's still often the authoritarian environment in which some people become easy targets for that abuse to happen. And so there's a lot of distrust of organized religion, with very good reason. As Parker writes, oppressive religious community can be soul-destroying. The threat of hell for those who do not toe the line, shunning or exclusion for those who stray from the required practices, dominating ideologies that stifle critical thinking and expect people to check their intelligence at the door, and religious communities whose ideals, rituals, and symbols imbue violence with meaning. in a way that ends up justifying genocide, crusades, inquisitions, and terrorism. So it makes sense that with all those possible downsides, a lot of folks just aren't willing to trust organized religious community. But wariness about religious community isn't something that was invented in the last 50 years, or in the last 100 years, or in the last 1,000 years. In the book of Amos, God is described as saying, "I hate and despise your solemn assemblies. Take away the noise of your singing. Stop your ritual sacrifices. Instead, let justice roll down like waters." Or there's the classic story of Jesus flipping over the tables in the temple and crying out, "You have made my Father's house into a den of thieves." And of course, there's the 16th century Protestant Christian reformers who called the Pope the Antichrist. And there's Frank Lloyd Wright, that architect of the 20th century, who, when asked about organized religion, responded, "Why organize it?" It's because of all this ambivalence that liberals and progressives often have about organized religion that our religious institutions often remain weak and underfunded, distracted by endless attention to process. We can have difficulty coordinating our efforts with one another and our ties to each other. Our ability to accomplish big things together can end up weaker as a result of that. Parker describes a friend of hers, a progressive United Methodist lay leader and community activist, saying that liberal religion teaches you that you can do anything you feel called to, as long as you're willing to do it by yourself. But is it even possible to be religious alone? Sometimes when people talk about why conservative religious communities have thrived in recent decades while liberal ones have not, they'll say something to the effect of, well, their theology is so much more compelling. If you need to, what you need to do is go to church and be really active in order to stop from being in hell, that becomes a pretty powerful motivator. And there may be some truth to that, but Parker offers another possible explanation. That religious conservatism has grown not because its theology is more inspiring, but because conservatives in recent decades have been better at creating and sustaining religious communities that offer people meaningful connection. Meaningful connection with one another, support in enduring life's trials and tribulations. Our hesitance to trust our institutions leads them to being under-resourced, which leads them to being not sufficiently connecting. But it's important that we do invest in our religious institutions because our ecclesiology involves two very distinct claims about the importance of our religious institutions in particular. One, that our religious communities should be places where we learn and practice ways of life that end up transforming the larger culture of which we're a part, in ways that result in greater nourishment and health for everyone. And secondly, that we can cultivate our own healthy interdependence with one another through our practice of covenantal relationships. So that first one, about transforming the larger societal culture, is so important because it's not something that we can do alone. Just like Carrie was offering up earlier about her experience in the classroom, that's not something that one individual can completely turn the tide on. It's something that we as a people need to join together on to make a shift. Me as an individual, I can't do it. You as an individual, you can't do it. It's only when we join together and coordinate our efforts that those shifts become possible. An example of this is in the Unitarian Churches of Transylvania. Unlike every other Christian church in the region, they baptize and confirm people after Easter instead of on Easter. And for them, that is significant because for their neighbors, baptism happens on Easter because it's supposed to be a symbolic reenactment of the death and resurrection of Jesus. But for the Transylvanian Unitarian churches, to be baptized means to join the community of Jesus' disciples who persist in compassion even after Jesus was crucified. And because of that different ecclesiology, this religious community ended up being able to navigate some really difficult political circumstances. As Parker writes, in the 20th century, when the communists came into power in Romania, they imprisoned many of the Unitarian ministers. The dictator Ceausescu launched a plan to systematically destroy the Unitarian villages, flooding some, bulldozing others, and the children born in this time were taught early by their parents to put up an appearance of compliance and cooperation, while they joined the communist youth and dutifully mouthed slogans and songs. But as one Transylvanian minister explained, at the same time that we were going to the communist youth meetings, we were also participating in a counter-education system conducted by the church and the elders who would teach us about our religious heritage, our obligation to resist as disciples of Jesus. And so the beginning of Ceausescu's fall from power happened when a minister was arrested for criticizing the Ceausescu regime, and people took to the streets to demand an end to that regime. And their spirit of dissent that had been sheltered over decades and nurtured by these religious communities flowered into actions that created change. That sort of community strength comes about less because of beliefs or traditions and more because of how we relate with each other. This is where our second ecclesiological claim comes in, that we can cultivate our own healthy interdependence with one another through our practice of covenantal relationships. As John Burns writes, like Martin Buber, I believe that we humans are the promise-making, promise-breaking, and promise-renewing animal. We ourselves are created in the context of relationships, of promises, of commitments. We then either break them and make new ones, or modify them, or renew them. And all authentic covenants are created, sustained, and renewed in authentic hope. This claim comes from our Calvinist Puritan heritage. Unlike the authoritarian structures of the Roman Catholic Church or the Church of England, the Puritans insisted that congregations should be organized by people coming together and making a covenant to walk together in their spiritual lives. So in the place of an established creed to which everybody was supposed to consent, people were to consent to the common agreements of community that were arrived at through a democratic process. But I don't think I'd be the first to say that Puritanism had its downsides. Among many other aspects within the community itself, there was, of course, the impact on the indigenous folks that they tried to assimilate or segregate onto reservations or annihilate through war. Or similarly, the Calvinists who set up the apartheid system in South Africa, inflicting huge violence and suppression on the native people there. And so in the 20th century, Unitarian James Luther Adams offers an important corrective to this Calvinist version of covenant. The covenant itself, he argued, should be directed to the thriving of all beings and all life, not just some, not just the people in the community. And furthermore, those within the covenant need to hold themselves accountable to something or someone beyond their own group. The community can hold itself accountable to its best interpretation of God's intention, or it can hold itself accountable to those most at risk of harm, or it can hold itself accountable to the revelations of science and reason. Different religious communities relate to different transcendent sources, or a combination of a number of different transcendent sources. With an adequate accountability practice in place, the sheltering walls of community can bless not just the people within in that Calvinist heritage, but also be a blessing to the larger society. A covenant is not a contract. Contracts arise from distrust or worries or what-ifs. Penalty clauses are thrown in there. But as John Burns writes, the core of the spiritual covenant between you lies in the trust and love that you have found in one another. He says this whenever he marries a couple. The core of the spiritual covenant between you two lies in the trust and love that you have found in one another, in your gratitude, and in the commitment that you make to care not only for one another, but also for your relationship, to seek to renew it when challenged. This whole series talks about hope. It's in the title of the series, A House for Hope. And a key thing to note is that true hope cannot be individualistic. If human beings are social creatures, then hope must have a social and transcendent dimension to it. And so my invitation to you over this coming week is to look over those 4 questions that are in your order of service and maybe do some journaling about them, maybe some thinking about them, maybe call up your son or daughter or parent and say, hey, I have these thoughts about this thing. Whatever works for you to sort of process and talk them out for yourself. To come to your own understanding of what ecclesiology means to you and what this Unitarian Universalist heritage might signify. How can we move beyond isolation, individualism, or a lack of purpose? As Rebecca Parker writes, one way is by coming together with others in religious communities that fire our intellects, touch our hearts, connect us in loving support with others, turn us to face the world's painful realities with honest and critical analysis, and direct us into deeds of service and social activism. Through assembling, coming together, people can harness what James Luther Adams called the organization of power and the power of organization. May it be so for now and always.
We choose to welcome the spirit of life and share our resources to actively nudge our world toward a better place. This month, we are sharing our Loose Change for Social Change with Aaron's Farm. There should be insert that you could see what it's all about in your order of service. The money in the baskets will go to maintaining the mission of the church. The money in the cups will go to Aaron's Farm. For those not with us in person today, there is an online link for both one-time and regular donations. 4 volunteers to carry the cups and baskets. Another way that we walk together is by joining together for fun and fellowship. I have a few announcements. The second annual Farrell Family Bocce Ball Church fundraiser is going to be Saturday, September 7th. Boy, that's pretty soon. With a rain date of Sunday, September 8th. You can sign up just to eat dinner or sign up for dinner and bocce. You can sign up as a team of 2 or just for yourself. And we'll find you a teammate. $25 for dinner, $25 to play bocce, and the winning team splits the bocce ball money. If you do not feel like you have to give that money back to the church, although it would be nice. Last year was super fun, so don't miss out this year. I missed out last year. I think I'm going to go this year. The sign-up sheets are in the parish hall, or ask Tracy or Michelle if you have any questions. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated our 150 years of Unitarianism in this building. This milestone didn't happen on its own. We stand on the shoulders of generations who came before us in this church. The board has afforded us an opportunity to help plan and dream about our goals for the future and plan the steps to take to get there. Your presence is requested at a congregational retreat here at the church on Saturday, October 19th. There will be breakfast. Somebody's saying parlor donuts. I don't know what parlor donuts are, but and lunch will be provided. Now, on your inserts, it says 10:30 to 3, but I had a board member tell me it's 9:30 to 2. But anyway, when we get further along, you'll know. I don't know these things anymore. I'm not on the board anymore, so Okay, Faith in Action invites the congregation to gather for breakfast at Jay's Breakfast Club in Gary on Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th at 9:30 a.m. It's part of an initiative to explore and celebrate diversity in our area businesses and to help to uplift business in communities that don't get a lot of support. See Pete, Cindy, or Michelle for more information, or if you would like to carpool. Now please, if you rise in body and spirit for, oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Jess. We have a new ministry for communications, which we're doing a great job getting on the agenda, as you can see. Myself, James up on deck there, James Johnson, Maggie, please wave, Ashley, am I forgetting? Tracy, which we are actually keeping you on, are on the committee, and if you want to reach us, outreach at, First Unitarian, the long word, email address here. So we're going to work on getting more information about Friday the 13th, about October 19th to you. This little insert that came today was the effort on our group to make sure that we have something printed. Hopefully things will be more printed and available to you on a regular basis so that you have things in your hand and visible, and then the iPad that you had when you were coming in today, we're going to make sure we see who's coming in. That will allow us to also collect who is interested in different events and remind you about those events. So more to come from us, but we just wanted to make sure that you know that if you're interested, you can join us. Again, you can reach us at outreach@firstunitarian@hobart.org, and we are open to your feedback, and please let us know if you're interested in joining us in improving communication and how we reach new members and people in the community.
Thank you. Okay, now you could rise, if you're able and willing, for the hymn 118, This Little Light of Mine. Okay, for closing words. Go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding in the hearts of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of God.
Sunshine, you might not totally recognize that, but that is from the original musical Hair.
Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Everybody's invited into the parish hall for snacks and good conversation.
And we'll also have a discussion